going to Fab Fives. On the equipment side, we'll be keep paying to the equipment vendors. And ultimately, what will be the strength of this industry in India? I know that you are aware that the Chinese company, 10 years back, they got a $10 billion worth of financial support from the government. Today, that company is doing more than $50 billion worth of business, and they're growing bigger and bigger. Now, why can't we do such a thing? Now, it is very easy to talk that, companies should invest, but unless, like somebody gives that kind of environment, we are from actually, Videocon, as you know, is very, very large in electronics and manufacturing. But our manufacturing units are 25-year-old. 20-year-old, when the government was protecting local industry, they were trying to provide special encouragement to the local manufacturing. But today, where is that local encouragement? There's nothing, is there? So, like when we see all these three elements, it actually worries us. The only hope is, like we look towards our big brothers, we see that they are going to do better. Maybe, we as a tail will grow with them. But ultimately, I think it is really not a very, very happy situation, when we see the future, especially seeing the OTT channels and other things.
Great. So Arvind has a latch-on strategy. He wants to latch on to the big guys and come across from deep waters. Let's all wait and watch how that goes. But let's have a perspective from the non-operator fraternity. And let me start with Sanjay Sharma. Sanjay, you watch this industry day in and day out. What do you think needs to be done, and what do you think is not going right?
I think we heard enough about how much money has been pumped in, and Martin Peter just shared that 29% is going to the government. I'm sure that operator and the association will keep lobbying to lower that fee which is going to the government. It's a long-run process. I want to give you another very different angle. In Economic Times today, I saw today Quicker, a website which was launched 3 years back, got $100 million of funding for a small stake sale. And I did mention about Flipkart. Assume for a moment all the e-commerce which is going on in India, if it was coming into the kitty of operator, because they are using all operators' infrastructure. Without operator, they are nothing. Their valuation is zero. So if you just add all that revenue to operator, you see a very different scenario. So operator can keep talking, saying that we are selling wires, we have done a lot of, but it is the time for them to probably see, if we keep focusing on data only as a dump pipe, these guys, again, Sam mentioned about WhatsApp at $19 billion. There were 3 guys in India who got few $100 million, just because they have created a value. So going forward, there has to be a thinking among the telcos, how do we encash this opportunity? Because they are setting somebody else is encashing. If we combine the revenue of both, then it's huge return in terms of the investment done against what revenue is generating. But, obviously OTT have their own agenda to drive, operator have their own agenda to drive, but I foresee if we have to see something good happening, maybe 2 areas which is a big focus. So obviously there is a huge investment on the network side. I foresee in India most of the network will now move towards network optimization of auto mode. You don't need thousands of people to run the last mile RAN. It will all switch to software oriented, its own kind of strategy. You run it, network does it on its own. And that's one part which I foresee on the technology. Yet we also foresee HETNET to optimize that. So this will happen on the technology side. But on the larger part, how do the value creator on the telco infrastructure are tying up their hands with the telcos in India? And this has to happen here. There are people who are growing, double the sales. Jabang.com was launched for. I'm trying to say these models because there are people who are innovative and they are riding on this infrastructure and making tons of money. And they will keep doing this unless there has to be some arrangement. And I'm sure that telco needs to see how do we partner with them. Are they enabled in terms of their internal technologies as well to partner is something they need to see. They need to have flexible model. And on the other side, we foresee a large growth on the smartphones. So things will definitely change. Of those 200, 300 million subscribers, which are young population, they will demand. And I'm sure that there will be an inflection point on e-commerce in times to come where there will be a huge, nobody as a youth wants to go to various queues to pay bills. Paying your bills, money is another one very, very big area. So all these three areas, if we foresee that we can line up things together locally, can definitely add, without further investment, because your infrastructure is already there, somebody is using. Just see how do we create a business model so that he is happy and you're happy and you're creating a value add there. So that's my take on the obviously positive side of it.
Yeah, that Sanjay is a different perspective completely. The only value addition I can make here is that when you combine the collective revenues of all operators across the globe, it comes to some few trillion dollars. But when you add up the revenues of all the OTT players, which includes Googles of the world, it is just about 5 or 6% of the revenues of the entire fraternity. So it's not that they are at 50% and, but they are 5% growing very quickly. And whenever we talk about some of these operators, we actually talk about valuations. We hardly talk about revenues and bottom line. And even the operations in India that you talk about, which are $1 billion, $2 billion valuations, where the money and where the profits will come from are still a question mark. So we'll come back to that question. Mao, your viewpoint, please.
Thanks, Ajay. Interesting perspective, and I was thinking that here is an application vendor, the Mahindra Comviva is looking forward to its fortune to large and small and medium operators, and you see the tone of the operators that's coming in. I just want to give a perspective. The south side of the food chain of operators, which is the OEM, the equipment vendors. At one point in time, the world has about 7 billion population. There are about 10 or 12, I'm talking about 5 to 7 years, so maybe 10 years back, there were 10 dominant equipment vendors, 3 or 4 in North America, Nortel, Motorola, Cisco, Lucent. In Europe, you had Alcatel, Nokia Networks, Ericsson and Siemens. Marconi, not a tier 1, but whatever. You had 2 in Japan, the NEC and the Fujitsu. And you had Huawei just raising its head from waters. Today, 7 billion population who all have a need for telecom, the world market can't sustain 10 suppliers. So that beats the entire question in terms of where the market is going. And I know all of you spoke about 60,000 crores, 70,000 crores of equipment that has been invested, but see the fate of this equipment. Only, and all of us know why, companies that have survived is because of the state support of ZTE and Huawei in China. All others in dire straits. Maybe Cisco is a little bit doing okay, but all of them in terrible state. And I think one of the fundamental reasons that the telecom industry, and this is very narrow view, and with this august audience, and I submit it with a lot of humility here, that we are still looking at squeezing that extra 50 cents or $1 out of our consumer's wallet, as opposed to really focusing on how do we expand his wallet. Look at what we are doing. When telecom industry in India was 200 million subscribers, 300 million subscribers, at that point in time, possibly you were catering to an average per capita income of, what, $20,000 or $15,000? But as you have expanded to 700, 800 million, today every incremental acquisition is possibly at $1,000 per capita income. And his ability to spend is not going to be how you squeeze that extra 10 cents out of him. It's about how do we create $1 more in his wallet so that he is happy to spend a 10. And I'll give an example. There are many examples that we've heard of. There is a service that one of the companies in Mahindra family does it. It's called Saral Rojgar. It's basically a service that is designed for the blue-collar workers, connecting the daily wage laborers or the masons or the carpenters to people who need that job. And if you get, instead of getting job for 10 days a month, if you get 2 days more, which is maybe a 500 rupee a day additional revenue to you, you're happy to spend that 10 or 20 bucks per day or 30 bucks a month on a subscription to cater to that. And my request would be that focus on expanding the wallet as opposed to squeezing the wallet. Thanks, Ajay.
Yeah, absolutely, Mao. This is a new perspective, and you raised some very pertinent points. We will now focus the discussion a bit and get down to some pertinent issues that probably will not go in a round robin fashion, but pick up an individual and who's probably the closest to that issue and ask him what does he believe should be done or is being done. So I think my first question obviously goes to Martin. And Martin, the question is, after having paid these prices for the spectrum, where do you think the 1 cent business model stands? Is it sustainable, not sustainable? And the moment you start translating that model onto data, because for data you'll need lots of spectrum. And I'm not talking 5 megs, 10 megs, 15 megs. You'll probably be talking 50 megs, 60 megs, 100 megs of spectrum. How will this 1 cent model sustain? And if it's not going to sustain, then what is it that you think the industry should be doing going forward to be sustainable and to bring the smile back on the industry's face?
Yeah, that's I think the core of the problem, Sanjay. A very good question, and there are many ways to answer it. But let me approach it from again the high level. If you have an ambition as a country, and there's clearly an ambition which was put down in the new telecom policy document of 2012, which says that we want 600 million broadband connections by, I think it was 2020, if I remember well. Now that's a high ambition level. As a government, if you put that ambition there, then I think the only way to get there is by having some form of industry policy. You cannot put these ambitions there and then leave it up to the weather to see if you will ever get there. Now, I can say one thing, with the current industry model, we will never get there. Simply because, indeed, you will need a lot more spectrum, and the spectrum is so expensive. Just to give you the feeling, here in Delhi, in the last spectrum auction, what was paid for 900 spectrum was just as expensive, or actually more expensive, than what was paid for the 900 spectrum in the whole of the UK. Now, if you realize that the UK has 3.5 times the inhabitants of Delhi, and if you realize that these customers spend at least 6 times of what a Delhi customer spends, that gives you a feeling how expensive spectrum in this country is. And then we're only talking one circle where we have to buy spectrum in 22. So why, you can say, why does the industry do that? I would turn the question around. Why does the government not make far more spectrum available? Because if you would auction off a Van Gogh painting once every 10 years, believe me, that's going to be a very expensive painting, because, you know, there's lots of collectors who want that painting in their collection. If you would auction 50 per year, I think the price of Van Gogh paintings would go down considerably. It's all about supply and demand. You can't blame the operators for paying so much if you don't put enough up for supply, because in the end, we know that we need that. We're already choked. Vodafone is in Mumbai, successful with data. We already choked with the first 5 megahertz we bought 3 years ago. I need more spectrum. So I think we need to change the industry model, meaning a lot more spectrum, and then also this heavy charge that the government does, this 29%, needs to come down. Because the 29% simply means that we are now working for the government and for the banks. Because the debt on the balance sheets is so high that actually we're working halfway for the banks and the other way halfway work for the government. That doesn't incentivize investors to come in with more money. Now, if we would get more spectrum, we would have to build the networks, we would have to increase our capacity. And I don't agree with Sanjay, let me also answer that. I think we are basically, in the end, the connectivity industry. I've been long in this industry, and this industry has this strange thing that it always wants to be something else. You know, when there was IT coming up, they all tried to be an IT company. We've seen that, Deutsche Telekom building a huge IT arm. All the BT had an IT arm. And then Apple came up, and they all wanted to be an Apple. Vodafone was the first one, putting up the Vodafone 360 handset. We recruited 2,000 people, built an Apple-like, total disaster. Then we want now to be the Facebook, and yes, of course, I would have loved to start Facebook. The problem is there were probably 500 of these companies starting at that moment, and you never know which one is going to be successful. So it's an illusion to think as an operator that you can be the one who will be successful in that world. There are certain opportunities, but believe me, they are very limited. And what we've seen over and over again is wherever connectivity providers went into content, And we have seen the big things happening in the US in the past, where MCI was merging with, what was it, the media company. And it was a complete disaster. They are demerged again already. So we will have to earn our money in what our business is. And our business is basically connectivity. And we will have to make the business model work there. And I'm very optimistic about that, assuming that we get the industry structure right, which means that we need to get less players, then we need to get better and more efficient spectrum, and we need to pay less to the government so that we have more money to invest, and then you will see the customers will get a better service, better quality, the companies start to make profits, the investors will flow the money back in, and then the machine will be turning again.
So Martin, I truly respect your position that we are best as access providers, and we should continue to focus on the access part of the business and improve ourselves over there. But you are aware, Martin, that the current situation of spectrum and the pricing of spectrum is not changing in a hurry. So if it's not changing in a hurry, what are you going to be doing as an industry leader on pricing, and how will you recover these costs in the short run till that fundamental shift happens?
Well, I think the good news for the industry is that last year, for the first time in the Indian history of of this industry, we have been able to increase prices. Not much, but you saw for the first time that RPMs, as we call them, the revenue per minute, has gone up by about 5, 6, 7%, depending on which player. But the reality is, let me talk again about Mumbai, there are players in the market there who deliver exactly the same service as we do at 50% discount. Now, how far can you build the premium as a brand, be it Vodafone, be it Idea, be it Bharti, it doesn't matter. There is a limitation to how far you can go. And these low prices are based on the wrong industry structure. It's based on the fact that people bought spectrum in the past, have no future, especially after the last spectrum auction. Believe me, they have no future, but they're sitting on a capital invested of probably a few $1 billion and just kind of trying to extend their lifetime, which is, from their perspective, completely understandable, but for the industry structure wrong, because it holds the rest back to do what is necessary. And indeed, if you compare it with China, I've said this before, in 2012-13, China invested $55 billion. $55 billion in 1 year in telecom. India did 3. We did 1/4 of that 3. But 3 is by far not enough for a country like India. So I think you need to get this structure right. And I remember very well when the minister came in 4 years ago, and I had the first meeting with him. He said, "Oh, you guys in the industry, you're fighting all the time. You need to get this resolved." The reality is the regulatory structure was put up in a way that there was no option for us than to fight all the time. So you need to get the structures right now. I think a lot of good stuff has happened the last year. Regulator, DOT, the industry, I think we're moving in the right direction, but you're absolutely right, we're not yet there. And as long as this structure doesn't fundamentally change, which means more consolidation, a more established structure with stronger players, that's what you see in the US, that's what you see in Europe. Most markets don't have more than 2 strong players, and then there might be 1 or 2 weaker players who are actually struggling and trying to merge. We saw that in the US, there was they tried to merge number 3 and 4, then the regulator says we can't do that because it's at the cost of competition. But the reality is there's 2 guys that call the shots. In the US it's AT&T and Verizon, so I can go on. In Germany it's Vodafone and Deutsche Telekom. In Holland it is KPN and Vodafone. I can go on and on. That is the industry structure.
And India?
India needs to go there, because otherwise you will never get a good quality service and you will never get your 600 million broadband connection.
So which are those 2 players?
Well, I'm of course very confident that I know one of the 2.
All right. So one job that I definitely don't envy is of the person sitting on my left side. I don't envy his job. He probably has one of the toughest jobs in the industry, given all the constraints that are there. So Mr. Upadhyay, given what's happening here and given what BSNL has gone through in the last so many years, and no matter what you do, the value of the enterprise has come down given the intense competition, given the constraints that you have on your inputs. Now, how will you as a leader do anything to transform BSNL given this big transformation that the industry is facing from voice to data? If you need 20 years old to come and transform, these businesses, how will you compete, given your constraints?
Thank you, Sanjay, for recounting our constraints. Yes, our constraints are plenty, and I'm sure each and every telecom professional sitting here is well aware of it. Be it on the staffing side, we have close to 270,000 employees with an average age of 50 years plus. And mind you, this average is going to increase over years, as the churn happens, because our fresh intake is hardly anything as compared to the total numbers we have. So this age is on the wrong side. Plus, coupled with that, we have a terrible skill set mismatch. What skill sets we need and what skill sets we do have currently in our organization. Those skill sets were excellent and they were required when they were recruited. But over the period of time when industry has changed its shape and it has become just like FMCG, we feel that our employee base is a severe constraint. But notwithstanding that, we have taken several steps, we know that these are the problems about which some actions are in progress, but as you mentioned about the structural changes, they are slow to come by, and we have hardly that much of time to wait that will happen. Our employees will suddenly vanish. Our wage bill, which is close to 53% of our top line, will suddenly reduce to the industry norm of 6 to 8%. So all those things, we know that they are time consuming, but we have to remain there till that happens. So for that, what we have done, we have made an ambitious investment plan, and as you are aware, we are so far literally a debt-free company, so debt is not a problem for us. We have made a plan of 40,000 crore spending capital investment over a period of 5 years, beginning this year. We feel that, again, taking this data opportunity is there. Our mindset again was voice-based, so our whole network was optimized for voice. We have taken steps about 6 to 8 months ago to make a shift, and we have optimized our network for data, and our data, as is true with any of my competitors, our data business has grown at least 4 times in past 6 months. So we are taking steps. On one side, we are aware of our constraints. We are trying to put them in a separate fixed line side. I must add something on the fixed line side. You wanted to ask something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add my question on the fixed line to say, you have the biggest revenue of the fixed line in this country, right? And you have a new player who's coming with new set of assets. He's fully capitalized, and probably he'll bring in fiber to home rather than copper. And he'll be coming with a new quality fiber in the market compared to a lot of obsolete electronics and fiber that could be sitting with you. How will you protect your revenues against somebody who's going to be attacking you all over again on the fixed line now from wireless? You've seen a big attack on the wireless, now you'll see a big attack on the fixed line. So how do you combat that?
Actually, on the fixed line side, just for information of the audience, I may add that we have close to 38,000 digital telephone exchanges at present. And out of this 38,000, 27,000 is in the rural areas. So we have got that many points of presence in the rural area, and I must say that at least 90% of these rural telephone exchanges are already connected to fiber. So we are very much aware of that asset which is with us, and we have also broadband enabled this 27,000 out of 27,000 rural telephone exchanges. Close to 85% are broadband enabled. So those things are there with us, and as the data demand increases with some steps which government is taking, and also the need itself of a customer towards data, we feel that we are better poised. Coming to this, modernization of these digital exchanges, we have already embarked upon that project, and we are nearly 60% through to convert these TDM electronic switches for fixed line network into IMS-based NGN. So that project is already underway and nearly 60% completed, and we feel that we shall be able to very soon derive benefits out of this conversion. For our rural telephone exchanges also, the project is on. Some progress has been made. Of course, they are mostly on CDOT technology, so we have already engaged CDOT to upgrade them to NGN. And so we are taking those steps. We are very much mindful of the challenge challenge which you have just referred to, and we are confident that we shall be able to take it on.
Great. So Arvind, I'm sure you were waiting for the auctions to get over to realize some value of the asset that you had. And you also must be wondering if there was an exit option, if at all, for anybody to merge with somebody or to buy out somebody. What do you feel about the merger and acquisition opportunity that sits after the policy has been laid out by the government?
I know that we are the youngest, and also the various circumstances and situations bring a lot of rumors in the market. But as far as our company is concerned, we came in 2008 with a very, very clear ambition to be a pan-India player. And we made investments. I think some of you may be aware that we still have our presence in 22 circles. We have got our media gateways which is working. We are operating our NLD and ILD operations there. And when all this thing happened, when we had an option to again come to the business, we decided that seeing the cost of the spectrum and seeing the overall business, and also by that time we had some learning, we realized that it's not so critical or important that we should be a pan-India player from the very beginning. So we chose that instead of just focusing everywhere, let's be very focused onto few circles. So we chose 7 circles. Out of those, 4 circles were already operating. So those circles, we are doing very good. I would say that as far as acquisitions and retention in those circles are concerned, it's very, very good. We are getting very good response. Now, your question is related to M&A. Yes, definitely we are in favor of M&A, but as far as our company is concerned, I think as we are concerned, we are focusing on business. And as you know that we got the liberalized spectrum, and because we got the liberalized spectrum, we always thought that there is a very good opportunity. Like we can definitely be into an area where we can realize better prices. 4G is a space, where the future is data, and on data side, there is a very, very good opportunity to realize better price. So as far as my company is concerned, I think we are very focused on our business. We'll be growing step by step. Yes, we will be open to any kind of options which come on our way to make this organization better. But I think most of the things are rumors what you hear.
Actually, I wasn't pointing towards any particular deal. My question was very general to say, given the M&A rules and guidelines in this country, do you think there are takers or there are no takers? But I understand. So let me move on to you, Mao, and say that you heard Martin say we are best at access provisioning, and let's concentrate on that, right? And you yourself have had very big amount of revenues come from value-added services, which according to me are dying down. I mean, everybody sees those, coming down. Where do you think this tussle between the OTT players and operators is settling down? Where do you think this is going? Because no matter who in the OTT player environment today is basically saying that voice will also be an application going forward. Do you see all this being a big threat for operators in the short run, and what do you think operators and service providers like yourself be doing to combat and come out of this dilemma?
Thanks, Sanjay. I personally don't think there is any threat to the operators, and I agree with you and Martin in terms of the views. The point that really kind of I'm alluding to is OTTs, if you look at it, you said, we are not talking about their enterprise value, their valuation. We're talking about operating income, operating margin. If you look at it, which OTT has made money? In India, we have close to 100 million Facebook users. We have about 40 million WhatsApp users. There'll be overlap between the two. Necessarily, all of them are on some data packs. If I do my rough calculations, assume it to be a union of 100 million total, at least there is $1 of revenue per year that the operators have made on the data packs. So the operators collectively, it's a small number, but would have made $100 million on a OTT service.